Something smart to chew on. The Lunchroom on RCI, Monday to Friday, 12:45 to 2 p.m. The Lunchroom, informative, enlightening, provocative, engaging. The Lunchroom on RCI, food for thought. The station that gives you, more lunch.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Lunchroom on Radio Caribbean International. It is a brand new month and we are on to Monday, the 2nd of February 2026. And of course, we can get us at our website, rcisaintlucia.com. We're streaming live on our Facebook page. You just have to search for the official page of Radio Caribbean International. And we're also streaming on YouTube. And we also have the good old faithful radio, 101.1 FM. That's our frequency here at Radio Caribbean International. Now, I'm going to send out some birthday greetings today. And first to my son, he turns 1 today. So happy birthday to you. And we do hope that you're having a wonderful, wonderful day right about now. Also sending birthday greetings out to Mrs. Shirley Ann Lubin. Happy birthday to you. Wishing you a wonderful and fantastic birthday. And also to Miss Cornelia Jacob, who's celebrating her birthday as well. Wishing you a fantastic birthday. Look back in time on some of the happenings in history on this date. Well, in the year 1653, New Amsterdam became a city, which was later on renamed New York City. In the year 1848, on this day, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo ended the Mexican-American War, where Mexico lost 55% of its territory to the United States, including California, Nevada, and Utah, in exchange for $15 million. 1901, on this day, the funeral of Queen Victoria took place at St. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle. In 1922, James Joyce's novel Ulysses was first published by Sylvia Beach in Paris. 1,000 copies being printed at that time. 1943, German Sixth Army surrendered after the Battle of Stalingrad in a major turning point in the European front of World War II. And in 1971, on this day, General Idi Amin ousted Milton Obote and appointed himself president and dictator of Uganda. We now move on to our dish of the day.
Serving now, the Daily Dish.
And welcome back to our lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. And we do hope that you have a very good and enjoyable week. And over the weekend, some news coming out of a recently concluded a conference that was being held here in St. Lucia, the second annual conference. It's an academic conference dealing with the racial disparities and its impact on health. And that is a conference which has been formed by Sir Cato Lorenzen, and he is a professor at the University of Connecticut and a lead professor in the area of regenerative medicine. And he has very strong St. Lucian roots, with his parents being out of St. Lucia. And he has certainly tried to give back to the island and ensure that it, in fact, is in part dealing with the issues that impact us. And certainly the matter of healthcare is critical. And Sir Cato has he's a PhD in engineering, but he's also a medical doctor, and he's certainly one of these multidisciplinary individuals. And he has certainly recognized that in as much as we look at medicine and we all being human beings, but there are in fact many issues, social issues that impact on health outcomes. And that, of course, has been very much studied in the United States of America, where you have observed through these studies have shown that minorities, particular people of color, and Black people in the United States of America have it more difficult in terms of access to healthcare and their health outcomes. Now, another St. Lucian, born St. Lucian, Dr. or Professor David Williams out of Harvard has done a lot of research in this matter as well, looking at the impact that this has certainly had on that race has had on people's lives. And the reality is quite often because of the issues of systemic discrimination, the long-standing impact that it has had on people of color, they have not been generally are not able to access as much healthcare. And this is not sometimes purely because of the availability of healthcare, but also the mistrust that exists with the system of healthcare that exists. So there have been very many factors impacting on that. And of course, right here in St. Lucia and in the Caribbean, the matter of our past and what that has done on influencing our diets, what it has done on the issue of health, certainly is another area that that we want to study. And we've heard many suggestions by the likes of even Professor Hilary Beckles, Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, speaking to the matter of the cause of reparations and pointing to the fact that health and health outcomes certainly are one of the major challenges that that we face with right here in the Caribbean. Very high prevalence of non-communicable diseases, very high rates of diabetes, high blood pressure, hypertension, many issues with respect to things that are tied to our diet and nutrition. And there have been suggestions, of course, our love affair of sugar perhaps started on the sugar plantation, and what we, of course, came from in terms of, and of course, that association of sugar being used to produce rum, and that alcohol, of course, not helping the cause of diabetics and health outcomes. So certainly, we have to look at that. The salt, of course, and the salt fish, and a lot of these, because there was not land available to or access to the sea as much, and so we were very highly dependent in the Caribbean on imported protein, which was coming in large measure out of the banks off the coast of Nova Scotia in Canada, the salted cod coming down here and being given to our ancestors. And so the matter of healthcare is a very major issue for us right here in the Caribbean. One of our greatest friends in that regard, a country that made a significant stride towards the development of its people, and in part through the development of its education and ensuring that its people were educated and literate, but not just literate, able to actually do quite a lot for themselves, and as well, of course, taking care of their health care, is that of Cuba. And the Cuban Revolution and Fidel Castro spent quite a lot of energy and time in development of systems that were geared towards social transformation and significant change of the population. it is and remains a hallmark of the revolution's success. The ability for Cuba to be able to project itself in like measure as many other countries which have far more resources than it, but it has been able to send out brigade after brigade, not of soldiers, but of men and women who are doctors and nurses and other trained professionals to be able to support the development across many other countries around the world. And Cuba certainly has been our friend in that regard, both in terms of sending the support, but also in the offering of scholarships over the years for so very many St. Lucians who were able to then head across to that island to be able to get training and tertiary education, and then come back and make a contribution right here in St. Lucia. This did not come easily, and I do recall an individual pointing out that there were marches that people had to protest on the streets and go walking in the name of ensuring that that many St. Lucians got this opportunity. And for a lot of them, of course, it wasn't easy studying in Cuba with difficult conditions, and that certainly hardened them and made them capable of being able to function perhaps anywhere in the world. And this, of course, has been very much important to our health system right here in St. Lucia. And of course, indication coming from the Prime Minister that there's lots of pressure being placed on him and other governments in the Caribbean that they want, the Americans seem to want this system to come to an end. We've heard, of course, from Marco Rubio himself, ethnically Cuban and out of Florida, and he seems to have certainly a lot of interest in the state of play at Cuba, and of course the characterization of the efforts there as anything but good. And he, of course, has been leading the charge as the Secretary of State for the United States of America in terms of U.S. foreign policy. And a lot of that policy seems to be aimed at regime change in Cuba. Of course, we saw what happened in Venezuela quite recently, and Venezuela and Cuba were very, very close and remain close allies. And Cuba certainly depends a tremendous part on the ability of Venezuela to provide oil and gas for its economy. Significant challenges right now in respect of Cuba. They, of course, are also facing a hard time in terms of tourism, which has been a major player in the revitalization of the Cuban economy. So we'll have to see how this, of course, continues to pan out as pressure is being placed on other Caribbean countries to do away with a lot of these programs. Now, of course, we've heard many a statement come from various leaders of the Caribbean. We've even heard retaliation by the United States of America, the likes of I think the finance minister or foreign affairs minister, was it, over in Grenada, and others losing their visas on the basis of the statements that they made in connection with the Cuban medical missions. That certainly bring a lot of help to these islands. And of course, we've heard from the likes of Mia Mottley, Prime Minister of Barbados, in like measure, speaking about this important, the importance of Cuba in helping the Caribbean, even though at the time she was saying that Barbados does not actually have any formal program as such with at current. But it is very much important here in St. Lucia. The programs like the Cuban Eye program, of course, vital, and a lot of the human resource base of the health sector here in St. Lucia is tied in some measure to the support of Cuba, whether directly through through medical professionals coming from Cuba or the training programs um, for St. Lucians. So it is, of course, a very interesting time here in the Caribbean. And of course, according to one academic, he is saying no one is coming to save us. The Caribbean's reckoning. And I speak to the Pro Vice Chancellor, the principal of the University of the West Indies Five Islands campus that is over in Antigua. And he is Professor C. Justin Robinson. And he penned an article, and that article has certainly been making a lot of rounds around the Caribbean, and perhaps we can give it a read at this time. The last 12 months have been an education, not in what we hoped, but in what we should have known. We watched the Trump administration assert America first with a bluntness that left no room for ambiguity. We watched Canada and Europe accommodate, recalibrate, defer until Greenland was threatened, until a NATO ally was in the crosshairs. Then suddenly, sovereignty mattered. Strategic autonomy became urgent. Decades of comfortable assumptions dissolved in weeks, and I have had to revisit my worldview. The lesson for the Caribbean could not be clearer. No one is coming to save us. Not Washington, which sees us as backyard or afterthought. Not London, which long ago moved on. Not Ottawa, which has its own recalibrations underway. Not Brussels, which discovered its own vulnerability and has no bandwidth for ours. The rules-based international order we were told to trust has revealed itself as a convenience for the powerful, suspended the moment it becomes inconvenient. We are on our own. The question is whether we will finally act like it. The closing migration valve is only the most visible symptom of this deeper exposure. For 3 generations, a critical plank of the Caribbean's unspoken economic policy was to export our most ambitious people and import their remittances. Every August, the airports tell the story. Young graduates with boarding passes to Toronto, Miami, London. Parents holding it together until the car park. WhatsApp groups that become primary relationships punctuated by visits for Christmas, Carnival, weddings, and funerals. Migration absorbed talent our economies could not employ. It eased political pressure our governments could not withstand, and funded our consumption our productive sectors could not support. We built economies our people endure, not economies they choose. Now, even that escape hatch is closing. Migration policies in the US, Canada, and the UK have shifted structurally, not cyclically. But migration was only one dependency among many. We depended on favorable trade arrangements that have eroded, on tourism markets that pandemic and recession can shut overnight, on remittances vulnerable to economic health of host countries, on an international system we assumed would constrain the powerful and protect the weak. Every one of these dependencies has been exposed. We are not facing a single crisis. We are facing the compound failure of a development model built on external cushions that no longer exist. We know what works. We have known for decades from the examples of Asian economies. Invest in education before you can afford it. Protect infant industries while forcing them to export. Build state capacity through practice and diversify relentlessly. And yet, we still graduate students into unemployment. Still import food we could grow and energy we could generate. Still watch each island replicate the same failing sectors while regional integration remains a conference topic rather than lived reality. The question is not what works. The question is why we refuse to do it. The honest answer is uncomfortable. The status quo has beneficiaries. Import dependence enriches the merchants who control distribution. Fragmentation protects politicians whose power depends on national rather than regional constituencies. Scarce productive employment keeps labor cheap for tourism and brain drain relieves governments of demands they cannot meet. We have not failed to develop by accident. We have developed exactly the economies that existing power structures required, and too many of us are complicit. External cushions made this sustainable. Their disappearance makes it untenable. What would a Caribbean built for greater opportunity and self reliance actually look like? Picture the software developer working from Antigua for clients in Sao Paulo and New York, compensated at global rates, spending locally, raising her children where she was raised. Picture the climate engineer whose expertise honed in the hurricane belt is contracted by governments from Fiji to the Philippines. Picture the agricultural scientists whose drought resistant crops feed the region. Picture the creative professional whose music and film reach global audiences from a studio in Kingston. And picture this, a CARICOM that negotiates as a bloc with a bit more leverage, a regional disaster response that mobilizes before external aid arrives because we built the capacity ourselves, a Caribbean that speaks with one voice in international forums, not 15 voices easily divided and dismissed. These are not fantasies. They are choices we have failed to make. 5 shifts can begin to make them real. Make climate adaptation an export industry. Every challenge we face, hurricane resilience, coastal protection, water scarcity, reef restoration, is a challenge the world will face. We can develop the laboratory that develops solutions and the sales room that markets them. Build digital infrastructure as if our future depends on it, because it does. High speed internet is not an amenity, it is the foundation of every service industry that can pay global wages. Treat it as a public utility and then align education with the sectors it enables. Keep our energy dollars in the region. We spend 5 to 15% of GDP abroad annually to buy fossil fuels. Renewable energy keeps that money circulating domestically, but only if we require local participation in installation, maintenance, and eventually manufacturing. Energy policy is industrial policy. Extend OECS level integration across CARICOM. The Organization of Eastern Caribbean States proves what is possible. A common currency, a single Supreme Court, genuine labor mobility, coordinated foreign policy. Why does deeper integration work amongst 8 small islands but stall among 15 territories? Because smaller players had no choice but to pool sovereignty. Now none of us has a choice. 50 years of talk is enough. Forge a common foreign policy. In a fragmenting world, small states survive through collective weight. 15 separate foreign ministries pursuing 15 separate agendas is a recipe for irrelevance. A unified Caribbean voice on climate, on trade, on the terms of great power engagement is not idealism. It is survival. The last year taught Europe that strategic autonomy is not optional. It is teaching Canada the same. The Caribbean should not need more instruction. Development is not a technical problem awaiting the right policy paper. It is a political struggle over who captures the gains from economic activity. Pretending otherwise is why we have so many excellent reports and so little transformation. So here's the call, not to abstractions, but to people. And it goes on. We will actually perhaps try to capture the balance of it after our weather news, because we're actually due to take that in. So that's our dish of the day. And we're going to take in our weather report at this time.
This has been The Daily Dish. This has been RCI's Weather News. For more information, call the Weather Hotline. This is Radio Caribbean International. It's now time for the Weather News.
So the 1.1 is now time for your weather report as of 12 noon today, presented by Island Style Talembert. The forecast for St. Lucia Valley for the next 24 hours, the winds will be blowing from between the east and east-southeast near 18 miles per hour or 30 kilometers per hour. The weather fair to partly cloudy skies with a chance of brief showers. And there is an advisory here which reads small craft operators and sea beavers are advised to exercise caution due to above normal seas. The forecast for the Lesser Antilles, fair skies becoming cloudy at times with a few showers. And the weather summary, the Atlantic high pressure system will maintain moderate easterly winds across the region during the next couple of days. Also, a weak low-level trough will cause a few cloudy periods with brief showers across the Lesser Antilles during the forecast period. And this has been your weather forecast as of 12 noon today, presented by Island Style Talembert.
This has been RCI's Weather News. For more information, call the Weather Hotline at 454-3452. RCI 101 number 1.
Island Style. We got the time to make you go. We got the time to make you say, yeah. We'll have to make the right choice. Island Style. Whoa. We got the time that will make you happy. Island Style. Oh yeah. We make your dream come alive in Island Style.
We have times and princess, pieces and ground. Everything you need is on the house out. For the best price and the latest style. Take a little drive down to Island Style car.
We got the time to make you go. We got the time to make you say, yeah. Quality rice, service choice. It's all an Island Style.
Visit us at our showrooms in Bellarosa, Rodney Bay, on the John Compton Highway, Cass Street, and behind Ruby's Gas Station on the Library Viewport Highway. So call us on 450-452 or 453-TILE. Island Style, Tile and Bath. When you think tile, think Island Style.
And welcome back to the lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. And of course, we were just taking in a piece that was penned by Professor Justin Robinson, and he is the principal of UWI's Five Islands campus over in Antigua. Of course, that is the latest of the campuses of the University of the West Indies. And he was giving some sobering advice to the Caribbean and to readers, indicating that no one is coming to save us the Caribbean's reckoning. And we were just wrapping up, actually, the final part of that, where he was, in fact, giving some advice then to various audiences. And so we're just going to continue to take in just that. And of course, it reads as follows again. To our governments, convene not for communiques, but for commitments. What cannot be measured will not happen. What has no deadline is a wish. To our private sector, invest in production, not merely intermediation. Train workers, pay wages that compete with Toronto. Your children will inherit what you build or fail to build. To our citizens, demand more. Every election, every budget, every policy debate, ask whether this builds an economy your children will choose or one they will flee. Political will does not descend from above. Instead, it arises from populations that refuse to accept drift. We built economies our people endure. Now we must build economies they choose. No one is coming to negotiate for us. No one is coming to protect our interests in a fragmenting world. No one is coming to build the economies our children deserve. No one is coming. This is not a tragedy. It is a liberation from the illusion that someone else would do this for us, that the international system would protect us, that we could defer hard choices indefinitely. The only question now is whether we will act like we finally understand. And that piece, as I said, was penned by the principal of UE5 Islands campus, Professor Justin Robinson, on the entire matter with respect to the past 12 months and the significant shift that has occurred worldwide, and of course has certainly been a revelation, as you would perhaps contextualize it, and a new moment for the Caribbean to perhaps even do more than just pivot, but to certainly find an entirely different orbit in which to operate. And some of the critical areas where he's indicating that shifts really have to occur. One, in utilizing our challenges to our benefit, and in particular the matter of climate adaptation. The whole thrust now is not about climate change, it's about climate action. And he's making the point that if we are, in fact, and we must act with respect to the preparations, that issues that we're facing in terms of water scarcity, in terms of how we protect our coastlines and coastal resources, these are all opportunities to be the world's lab. You know, let's do the kind of experimentation, let's do the kind of research, let's show that it can work, and then take that and replicate it in other parts of the world. And that's, of course, a very important message there, that we have the ability to create the solutions, but we certainly do need to then take those solutions and make them market ready so that we can bring them around the world. We've seen in the past, for example, in the instance of very early on, I think research that was done in Barbados in terms of solar water heating. That was one of the very first areas where that was actually done, right here in the Caribbean. And we become a world leader in solar water installations. No, we probably did not. We did not, in fact. And so what he's saying is that these, in fact, the opportunities to lead the way in solving our problems should certainly allow us to be able to valorize that to solve the problems of to create products and services that the rest of the world actually requires. Of course, the importance of digital infrastructure and the reality that we're living in. He underscored that point being very, very important. And this has been something that we've been speaking about for a long time in the Caribbean. And in some respects, perhaps we have done some good work in that area, and then we sometimes find ourselves, losing the plot. And so the importance of keeping that front and center is very, very important. And by digital infrastructure, it's not just merely the pure telecommunications infrastructure, but what is going into that entire ecosystem of development of the ICT sector is really, really important. And so, do we have the human resources to be able to support what's going on in that respect is also very important in that context. So he's really keying in on environment, right, and getting that correct and making and valorizing that. Digital, all right, the digital economy, the green economy, the digital economy, of course, the matter of energy. And this, of course, is something that I think most countries around the world have had a very good appreciation of. Certainly the very large ones, they take their energy policy very seriously, because they realize that you've got to have energy if you are going to industrialize. The surplus of energy, having energy sources, is what then allows countries to be able to make that leap forward in terms of industrialization. So, access to energy then leads to mechanization, because all of these systems require energy for them to be able to run. And so, highly important that we realize this aspect. And the shift that certainly has to come in our context is that we need to be seeing potentially these islands becoming pretty much self-reliant on energy, and perhaps can even be net exporters of energy. It is not unthinkable, and the availability of a lot of the assets that we have, the resources in terms of solar, in terms of wind, good resources that are available, but then also the sea, lots of different technologies there that are still to some degree changing and still being piloted, if you prefer. Ocean thermal energy conversion and wave energy conversion. Lots of different possibilities there. Which comes back to the same first point, of course, in terms of that shift that needs to be happening in terms of climate adaptation. But we're doing it not just because of the climate, really, but we're also doing it because it makes good business sense that we should be able to have significant surpluses of energy. So that helps our overall ability to industrialize and to be able to, of course, afford it. Now, how that path is achieved is still a route that many countries are trying to figure out. In as much as, for example, China has been able to be a leader in renewable energy, it still is within that mix, has a very strong dependence on fossil fuels, but certainly it's trying to get itself out of that. And so, of course, even the thrust towards geothermal, which we're seeing a number of our countries in the Eastern Caribbean taking. Dominica, in fact, very soon, I think this month, is supposed to be commissioning a 7-megawatt geothermal plant. We've seen efforts in Nevis, likewise, existing facilities over in Guadeloupe, and of course, right here in St. Lucia, the ongoing project in this regard will hopefully find bring forward good news in terms of our own potential for use of geothermal. The matter of deepening integration is again a very long-standing back and forth in the Caribbean, which we've been at for decades upon decades, going back into the days of the Federation. Why is it that such a small region of the in the world it finds it so difficult to come together? Well, of course, the nature of islands, but we have many other places, of course, which are island chains, and they've been able to do that. And so, the importance of the Caribbean being able to coalesce is very, very critical, and to coalesce on issues like foreign policy, issues on freedom of movement. Still, the matter of the CCJ is still up for a lot of countries to take on board. They haven't gone there yet. And of course, the matter of currency. That is another major aspect in the mix. So, and of course, he mentions it again, the common foreign policy. We have seen far too many times in the Caribbean where we have been victims of divide and rule. It goes way back, and it, of course, continues to into the current era. We've seen how that has impacted on our economies. We've seen the issues of cruise, for example, and we all across the Caribbean are benefiting from, or trying to benefit from, the cruise sector. The Caribbean is one of the most desirable places to cruise. We've got lovely weather year round, lots of interesting scenery and beaches and wonderful heritage to take in, and people want to come to the Caribbean, right? It's one of the hot spots, like the Mediterranean. Caribbean is a hot spot for cruise. But we have seen, however, how some countries have been able to leverage a lot more out of cruise than others. The Bahamas, of course, is right at the doorway. It's almost like the gatekeeper for the cruise sector because it's right adjacent to the ports of Miami and Fort Lauderdale, Cape Canaveral, right? And so they can definitely leverage a very, very good rate when it comes to their passenger taxes and what have you. The rest of the Caribbean, especially our part of the Caribbean, we had an opportunity to come together and say, hey, let's agree on a common rate, right, for which all, whether you stop in Grenada, whether you stop in St. Lucia, whether you stop in St. Kitts and Nevis, everybody, every time you do that, you're paying a single rate, which we've all agreed upon. And that couldn't happen. There was countries saying they would go at it alone. And of course, the cruise lines took the opportunity to poach one against the other. And we could not agree upon that single rate, which would have been a higher rate than what was being received generally. So we've missed out on many opportunities because we have not been united. We have not taken on a united front on some of the critical issues that exist. And so that is going to be a major point which we have to come to our senses on when it comes to geopolitics. It is far too often that we see the domestic issues, the little fiefdoms that we have, and the politics at that level dominating and not seeing the bigger picture of what needs to happen at the level of regional cooperation in that regard. So it also means, of course, that we've got to have leaders who are willing to be able to take those tough decisions in some instances when it comes to just that. Another area, of course, we continue to suffer on and needs a regional approach is a matter of, again, travel, but this time for our very own people. and the high taxes that we see being placed by each country taxing the other for internal travel. And so that too is another area where we need to think about, is it really helping us if it's going to be costing so much to travel between the islands compared to going to other parts of the world? And so that too, major issue in terms of how we can, as a country, leverage our tax system to encourage greater coalescing, greater trade between our islands, because certainly it would benefit us for the in the long run. So all of these things, of course, we have to consider. And there is a lot to take in as to whether the region is going to be willing to do so. What we've seen, unfortunately, over the past couple of months, though, is apparently each person going at it on their own. We've seen what is the situation right now with respect to Trinidad and Tobago, for example, and quite recently the pronouncements that were made by that island's Prime Minister, Kamla Persad-Bissessar, speaking about the United States of America and juxtaposing that against the rest of CARICOM and Trinidad's stance within the CARICOM region. Many, of course, pointed out that Trinidad and Tobago very strongly depends on trade within the CARICOM region for its economy. A lot of Trinidad has benefited, of course, because of its access to oil. Oil and gas has been able to have very, very cheap energy, and it has used that to grow its manufacturing sector, grow its industry. And we have been, in the rest of the Caribbean, the ready market for Trinidadian exports. So it certainly is a very interesting time with respect to the Caribbean and CARICOM relations. Let's take in a call at this time as we go to the phone lines. Good afternoon and welcome to the lunchroom. What's on your plate today?
Yes, good afternoon. As you mentioned about the taxes for inter-regional travel.
Yes, travel.
I was just wondering why we have not explored the possibility of having a ferry service from St. Lucia to St. Vincent. What's stopping the French ferries from going all the way down to St. Vincent? To me, if they can come from Guadeloupe to St. Lucia, why can't they also go down to St. Vincent?
I think they can, but I suspect, I'm just hypothesizing that it probably has something to do with the size of the market on one end and how connected the markets are. So, I mean, between St. Lucia and St. Vince and Martinique, right? You have it's almost like a pair. St. Lucia and Martinique almost act like a pair.
Yeah.
And in St. Lucia, you have a lot of strong connections with Martinique, which go way back. In Martinique, I think one estimate was that there were over 30,000 St. Lucians who reside over in Martinique. So you have a very clear and ready base market, right? That exists between those two islands. That would make for a very strong set of movement, if you like, between those islands. Similarly, of course, between Martinique and Guadeloupe. I mean, these are two very large French departments, relatively large. Martinique has 400,000. Guadeloupe has about 400, a little bit more than that as well, 100,000. And so you have that back and forth that exists there. So, and of course, Dominica is right in between. So you might as well certainly include them, even though the population is not that large. It's only 70,000. Yeah. But in the case of St. Vincent, I suppose, has not been part of that Francophonie. And so that may be why the French market has not really seen it as a viable market.
Because
but
I find it a little strange that at times supply to St. Vincent, most times they have to go via Barbados. And St. Vincent is just our next door neighbor.
Yes. The ironies of interregional travel at this point. But I think it might be interesting to see whether on the Vincentian side, because they have ferry services which go down to their Grenadines. I know they do it on occasion sometimes when they've got like independence and whatnot. They organize these one-off events. But can it be something that might be a little bit, maybe once a week or twice a week? That kind of service might be feasible. It's something to think about. If the market,
it probably could just operate between Beaufort and St. Vincent, as opposed to
so Beaufort, yes, exactly that. That would perhaps make good sense. And but I guess again, you would have to look at the market, and I think it should be and I think we certainly probably have a lot more to gain than even the Vincentians, because St. Lucia would then become a place for people from St. Vincent to potentially shop, and so I think it's a great opportunity to certainly explore. But I think there would have to be a push on the St. Lucia side to do so, even though that the Vincentians probably have the logistics, the boats already that could probably do it. We probably are the ones that need to make it happen more than them, because I think we would be likely to stand more benefit than even St. Vincent. They would benefit too, of course, because you get people who want to explore and vacation and that sort of thing. But in a lot of times, like I guess, like in the case of St. Lucia, for example, we benefit quite a lot from Martinicans coming and spending a lot of money here in St. Lucia, in festivals and in shops, retail, and everything. Likewise, it happens, of course. The reverse happens too. A lot of St. Lucians go across. But I think overall, it's going to be beneficial to everybody. But I think we probably need to have a little plan of our own as to how to make it happen. We've been hearing about Barbados, speaking about it, Barbados, Guyana. There've been some interest over there. I'm not sure if they've actually started yet in terms of shipping. But because centuries ago the Caribs, our Mariners conquered the region for shipping. Yes, certainly. Yes. And our the quote unquote Caribs, the Kalinago, were traders. That's what they were. They were traders. They were going up and down the islands and doing lots of trading. So it is certainly things that have happened many times before, and we've had a boating culture here in St. Lucia before as well, especially in terms of Barbados. Schooners heading across to Barbados to sell produce and what have you. So it's something that we certainly do need to consider as a possibility. But I suspect we'll have to see whether there'll be a requirement in terms of how much state support is going to be needed to push something like that forward. Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much for that, caller. Have a good one. And of course, the importance of logistics and trade, very, very, very critical for our development. Good afternoon. Welcome to the lunchroom. And what's on your plate today?
Good afternoon, Mr. George.
Hi, caller. How are you doing?
Yeah.
Well, we know you've been on.
There's a lot of points you come in there, but when I look on it, the 50 islands, when they come to the common market, it was the Chaguaramas Treaty. You see, the Treaty of Chaguaramas.
Treaty of Chaguaramas, yes.
Yeah. And how Trinidad can come out and just walk off on us and go with the Americans?
Well, I'm not sure that they've gone yet with the Americans. I don't know if the Americans have quite taken them in, but But and it might just be more chest beating than anything else. That's the other thing. I don't know that Trinidad is necessarily going to be going anywhere. To be honest.
But when the world watch America now, no, when England give settlement, anything anybody would attack St. Lucia, is England would send a soldier boots on the ground. But right now, it don't look like that because it looked like England go back to the jacket, and they won't send.
Well, it's been that way before, So
You love that, Mr. Judge.
no, I'm saying it has been that way before, even during World War One and World War Two. England was not able.
Yeah, World War One, World War Two. Our people put their boots on and go and fight for Britain.
Yeah, well, not just that, but I was saying that even in the sense that in World War One, I think it was they sent Canadian soldiers to the islands, and in World War Two, we had the Americans. So it's been a long time. England hasn't been sending soldiers in that sense,
Yeah, but the treaty we had with them, they would defend us.
Well, in principle, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is, America had a treaty with the Cubans, and in that treaty for Guantanamo Bay, and it's over 100. It's 100 years treaty, and it's over 100 years. America refused to give Cuba back Guantanamo Bay.
Well, I'm not sure if you're following what's happening with respect to the Diego Garcia matter in the Indian Ocean. Now, those islands, and I think you mentioned it some time ago in one of our
Britain
programs.
Give back.
So Britain was giving it back to Mauritius, right?
Yeah.
The islands of Mauritius, and but Trump has said that no, he doesn't like the idea, and Britain is being silly and foolish to be able to give that island back because that is too much of a strategically important location to give away. So it's interesting how Trump is getting involved
because on Guantanamo Bay, America could just flood there with boots on the ground because there's bases there.
Well, the same in respect of Puerto Rico, in respect of the USVI. These are all assets that the U.S. has in the Caribbean, and we of course saw them being utilized quite extensively during the capture of Maduro and the attack on Venezuela. I mean, this is. The United States has very well-positioned territories all around the world. The same, of course, in the Pacific. Guam, for example, very critical to American presence. And even in areas where they had very strong connections, they're trying to rebuild them, like in the Philippines, in Japan. Yeah, so these are all very, very interesting times. Will we see a return to bases in the Caribbean, in the independent Caribbean? There are a few, I think. In Antigua, I think still has a sort of a base.
Yeah,
but
St. Lucia is no more anyway.
Yeah. So very interesting.
Yeah, that's how it goes. So Uncle Tom just winning his battle all over now.
Yes.
What's really making me sick is the way the Chinese will sell a lot of equipment to those countries. Tell them that will be sophisticated in the air, this, that, and the other, and taking so much money. And the Russian as well, like Iran and those countries, they take so much money from those countries. And when come to action, they go in the shell. You don't hear they say anything because, and Venezuela was one of them. They sell so much equipment and everything, and where's the equipment? In the hand of the Americans.
Well, caller, you're going to have to leave it there, though, on that conversation.
Yeah, okay, there.
We're a little over time already. Thanks very much for calling in. And of course, to all the other listeners out there, we thank you for your listenership. We'll be back again tomorrow, God willing, for another program of The Lunchroom. Wishing you a very blessed Monday. Take care.